So what the heck is a muscle cruiser? A discreet individual who scours bodybuilding websites in search of romantic companionship? I don't think so. Let's get into it. It's hard to determine the exact origins of the muscle cruiser given the fact that, like many motorcycle classifications, the term just gradually came into the popular nomenclature when motorcycle journalists and publications used it to describe certain motorcycles. Back in the 70s, motorcycles were just kind of motorcycles. There were dirt bikes and street bikes, and most style differentiation was done by the riders themselves, who would perform custom fabrications. It is probably safe to assume that the muscle cruiser, also known as power cruisers, came to be an intentional style of motorcycle produced by manufacturers around the early 1980s. At a glance, these motorcycles mirrored much of the same stylistic choices of a traditional cruiser, with a more relaxed riding position, classic looks, and lots of chrome. But they began to differ from a normal cruiser through the use of a larger, more powerful engines that you would find in a typical cruiser. Over time, these bikes saw other upgrades to their suspension and braking systems to make all of that extra power a little bit easier to handle. Muscle cruisers of today are usually distinguishable from typical cruiser motorcycles by having a little bit more aggressive and edgy styling that says, "This ain't your grandpa's cruiser." Muscle cruisers typically don't have anywhere near the performance or handling prowess of a tried and true race bike, but are quite faster than many motorcycles you'll typically find in the cruiser style. They aren't canyon carving machines, but in a straight line or a big sweeping turn, a muscle cruiser can handle some spirited riding. To understand the muscle cruiser, we must look at some muscle cruisers of history. Take a shot for every time I say muscle cruiser in today's video, folks. Of course, the big four have always been fighting for the spot of the best and fastest motorcycle manufacturer ever since Honda released the CB750 in 1969. From there, the rest of the Japanese motorcycle brands followed suit with bikes like the KZ1000 and XS1100. There were even attempts to make an ultra-high-performing motorcycle like the two-stroke Kawasaki H2 Mach 4, aka the Widowmaker. And while these motorcycles were by all means fast for the time, they were just standard motorcycles without a specific classification other than UJM or Universal Japanese Machine, which in of itself sort of implies that they're just motorcycles that come in one flavor. There were cruisers and there were sport bikes and the naked bikes. I mean, they were the only bikes. By the 1980s, the Big Four began creating more specialized classifications with dedicated racing machines like Kawasaki's GPZ 900 Ninja in 1984, and as bikes began to be built and marketed as sport bikes, cruisers, or standard bikes, that made way for the muscle cruiser. One of the earliest muscle cruisers, and one that you guys have wanted me to talk about for so long, is the Honda Magna V65. Honda really was always setting the trends back in the day when this bike was released in 1983. As the typical cruiser of the times were pushrod V-twins from Harley-Davidson that made barely 50 horsepower. Meanwhile, Honda dropped the Magna V65, which had a massive liquid-cooled 1098cc V4 dual overhead cam engine that was capable of making a claimed 116 horsepower and 70 foot-pounds of torque. Who thinks Honda should bring back the Magna? That would be sick. Maybe make like a gigantic 1600 version of it or something that's actually more akin to the Rebel 1100. That could be kind of cool, but that's a little too extreme for Honda, let's be honest. For a shaft-driven motorcycle that had slightly forward controls, pulled back handlebars, and generally speaking had dad-friendly geometry, 116 horsepower was pretty damn impressive. The fastest quarter-mile time recorded on a completely stock V65 Magna was 10.65 seconds, and it was capable of reaching a top speed of over 140 miles per hour, which, for perspective, is just 0.4 seconds slower than a Lamborghini Huracan. Yeah, all while on two wheels with the wind at your chest and rocking 1983 technology. 116 horsepower in a cruiser from 1983 sounds so much scarier than 200 plus horsepower on a modern sport bike. This bike had a 6-speed transmission and was able to rev out to 10,000 RPM due to the short stroke of its V4. Unfortunately, the Magna V65 fell victim to the Reagan-era Harley-Davidson tariffs and would have its engine size reduced to 748 cc's in order to avoid the high import tariffs. The Magna would be discontinued entirely in 1986. Do you like waxing poetic about muscle cruisers, or more likely Turbo Hayabusas? Well, if so, and you'd like to be more involved with the channel, the best way you can support us is by signing up for a membership to our community over at YamiNoob.co. By becoming a member, you'll gain access to the Discord server, which is really the nexus of everything we do here at YamiNoob. If you want to be featured in videos or just simply talk to me, that's the best way to do it, and it's the coolest way to do it too. Members also get access to exclusive live stream content like the Yam Cam, and also get discounts on all of our gear at shop.yamanoob.co and discounted bike rentals from Twisted Road. Every membership level gets you automatically entered to win one of our giveaway motorcycles as well. We have 4 giveaways going on right now, so you're not going to want to miss the chance to win one of these awesome bikes. Head over to yamanoob.co to learn more, and I'll see you on that Discord server. While the Honda Magna was not long for this world, its place in the market was replaced and practically secured for the last 40 years by none other than the Yamaha VMAX. We did a whole retrospective review on the VMAX, which is really cool, and you should go and check that out, but I'll tell you guys about the bike here. The VMAX is what people think of when they think of muscle cruisers, and for good reason. When the VMAX debuted in 1985, it utilized an 1197cc V4 engine that made 120 horsepower and 83 foot-pounds of torque at the rear wheel. One of the significant features of the VMAX was the V-Boost technology, which was a system that opened a butterfly valve in the intake manifold as engine RPMs rose. This system added a 10% increase in horsepower on top of the standard engine output. Due to the engine configuration and V-Boost system, the VMAX pulled hard just about everywhere in the rev range with lots of low-end torque and continued power as you rolled on the throttle and the RPMs rose. The VMAX was never considered to be a canyon carver either, but would absolutely shred in a straight line. The VMAX could do a quarter mile in around 10.8 seconds, where it was slightly hindered by its heavier weight and inability to maintain traction at the rear wheel during hard launches. The VMAX remained practically unchanged until 2007, where it saw a hefty update. After the 2007 model year, this bike saw an increase to an engine size of a whopping 1679cc. That V4 made 174 horsepower and 113 foot-pounds of torque at the wheel. Yes, that is measured rear wheel horsepower, not crank horsepower. The newer generation VMAX has a 0 to 60 time of just 2.65 seconds, which is just absolutely nuts. And as I mentioned, I had the pleasure of riding a subscriber's VMAXs, yes, plural, he has each generation, a few weeks back, and it was very eye-opening. The VMAX is insane, especially the new one. It revs out like a sport bike, and you're like, why is this thing so fast? It should not be this fast. Another motorcycle made by Honda that sort of carried the torch for muscle cruisers from the older generations to modern bikes is the Honda Valkyrie. The Valkyrie, also called the GL1500, was first released in 1997 and made use of the same 1520cc flat 6-cylinder engine from the Honda Goldwing. When used in the Valkyrie, this engine saw cam and fueling changes to increase power and torque. At the wheel, the Valkyrie made 100 horsepower and 102 foot-pounds of torques. The first generation had pretty classic cruiser aesthetics with chrome accessories, two-tone paint, and swept-back handlebars. The Valkyrie was reintroduced in the 2014 model year with a whole new engine and design. It now used the updated 1832cc flat 6 engine that made 118 horsepower and 125 foot-pounds of torque. This bike was updated with fuel injection, better suspension, and new modern styling. The second-gen Valkyrie was only available through the 2015 model year. It might not have been a ripper compared to the VMAX, but it had a big dumb engine that was more capable of moving its 950 pounds of machine down the road with ease. Harley-Davidson has always made cruisers, but despite their gargantuan displacement, they barely ever crested 100 horsepower in stock form. Oh, but makes all the torques. I don't care, we're talking about muscle cruisers today, folks. Gotta have that power. At least until they began using their new liquid-cooled RevMax engine in the Pan Am and Sportster S, but before the RevMax, Harley had the V-Rod, their very first motorcycle to make use of liquid cooling. The original V-Rod debuted in 2001 to compete directly with other muscle cruisers of the time. The Revolution engine in the V-Rod was designed in part by Porsche. It was an 1131cc 60-degree liquid-cooled V-twin that had 4 valves per cylinder, pretty advanced for Harley-Davidson. These advances had the engine pushing 115 horsepower and 83 foot-pounds of torque, which kinda sounds like an Indian Scout, to be honest. They were numbers that no stock Harley-Davidson had yet to see. The V-Rod is pretty unmistakable in its style too, with the low-slung aerodynamic muscly look. The V-Rod would be available in a few different models until 2017, like the Night Rod, Street Rod, and V-Rod Muscle. The Revolution engine was increased in size to 1247 cc's and ended up making 125 horsepower. Harley-Davidson made a non-street legal drag version of the V-Rod called the Destroyer. Don't you love Harley-Davidson's branding? It's so American and silly, it's great. In collaboration with Vance and Hines, their team did the quarter mile in 6 6.815 seconds and almost went 200 miles per hour. While ultimately discontinued, the V-Rod laid a lot of the groundwork for their contemporary liquid-cooled bikes being made by HD today. They even had the fuel tank beneath the seat, just like you'd find on the new Nightster models. There are still some muscle cruisers being sold by manufacturers today, although they may not be as popular as you've seen in the past. One example is the Triumph Rocket 3, which you are most likely familiar with because we did a video on it a while back, and famously the fuel pump fuse blew up, but whatever. The Rocket 3 also has the largest displacement motorcycle engine ever. Yes, that's production motorcycle engine. That's what it says on the website. Don't talk to me about the Boss Haas. Please do not talk about the Boss Haas in the comment section. Oh my god. It's got a 2500cc triple cylinder engine, so 2.5 liters for the car driver. The Rocket 3 comes in a few different trims that vary in the extent of cruiser type riding, most notably in the form of foot forward controls, the extent of the handlebar sweep, and passenger accommodations. The Rocket 3 makes 165 horsepower on 163 foot-pounds of torque, which is just absolutely ridiculous, and it rides every bit as silly as you would think. I rode this bike around for a video review. Go and check it out. The Rocket 3 was first released in 2004 as an attempt to pull some riders from the American cruiser market, and over time, with more specialized marketing and design choices, the Rocket 3 became a contender in that muscle bike category, more akin to bikes kind of like the Yamaha VMAX more than the Harley-Davidsons. That is a lesson I'm glad most manufacturers have kind of learned by now after every attempt to win over HD stands, that it doesn't matter if a bike is faster, cheaper, more advanced, or more reliable, and unless the bar and shield is on there, you can slap all sorts of overpriced Screaming Eagle parts on it, and they are truly uninterested. Anyway, the Rocket 3 is a crazy motorcycle. It isn't the most traditional cruiser per se. Well, I guess it is not traditional at all considering that it has a 2.5 liter 3-cylinder engine mounted transverse, but it is a modern muscle bike that definitely pays homage to the early muscle cruisers of the 80s. Ducati brings their own muscle cruiser to the category with the Diavel. The Diavel has been in production since 2010, and it was originally designed to be marketed towards, you guessed it, older Harley riders, specifically those who enjoyed the V-Rod. The Diavel was officially and originally outfitted with a retuned version of the 1198cc Testastretta L-twin engine from the 1198 Superbike, but the current Diavel models are available with an 1158cc V4 or the 1260cc L-twin that has lived in the Diavel and the X-Diavel variant since 2017. The new V4 makes 168 horsepower and 93 foot-pounds of torque, while the 1260cc Testastretta makes 157 horsepower and 95 foot-pounds. The Diavel is a bike designed for the rider who wants slightly more casual riding position than a conventional sport bike, but still wants the Ducati character and price tag. The Diavel probably handles a corner a little bit better than a bike like the VMAX 2, as we have decidedly tested with on this channel, but with the X-Diavel, a Diavel variant with forward foot controls and some modifications to the overall geometry launched at a 0-60 time of 2.9 seconds, which is blisteringly fast. Since then, the Diavel has seen 0-60 times as low as 2.5 seconds, and the Ducati claims it has the fastest 0-60 time of any of their motorcycles due to its long wheelbase, low profile, and low end power. I'm unsure if that still remains the case, but at one point it was a claim made by a Ducati. Not bad for a muscle cruiser. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, go back and click that subscribe button and the notification bell and check out all of our other content. We have tons of amazing videos, and join our community over at YamiNoob.co. I'll be waiting for you on the Discord server. Fact: China only has one time zone despite being nearly the size of the United States, which has 6 time zones. Goodbye. Well, look at you. You've made it to the end of another YamiNoob video. You should consider yourself pretty lucky because I have curated this one right over here for you to continue watching. It's probably just as good as the one you just saw. Unless you hated the one you just saw. I don't know, maybe leave me a comment down below about how much you hated it as well too. Or just keep watching this one. Make sure you keep watching YamiNoob. Don't forget to keep watching YamiNoob. That's the most important thing. Keep watching YamiNoob.